Midway through a scorching Arizona desert morning, where dry winds sweep across red dust roads, Hannah, a young woman making a living from her old food truck, was tidying up her counter when a sudden sound split the air. Screech! Four sleek black SUVs braked hard at the exact moment, stopping right in front of her truck and freezing the entire little street in place. Their doors opened slowly, and out stepped a man with an unmistakably powerful presence, his gaze cold until it halted at the sight before him. A 7-year-old boy, frail and thin, washing dishes beside the food truck, as if it were the most critical task in the entire world. In that moment, Hannah had no idea. Her life, the boy's life, and the life of that man were all about to turn in a direction none of them could have imagined. Morning on the outskirts of Phoenix is always hotter than people expect. The sun hasn't even reached its peak, yet the ground already burns, radiating a heat so harsh it feels ready to swallow the breath of anyone who steps across it. In that heavy silence, a 7-year-old boy named Carter gently pushed open the wooden door of an old trailer, the place he called home. The door creaked like it was sighing, and Carter whispered, his voice so soft even the desert wind could barely hear it. "Mom has to eat today. I have to find something for her." His mother, Emily, a former nurse, once full of life, now lay on a thin bed inside the sweltering room. Her face pale, her breath weak, her eyes always trying to form a smile whenever they landed on her son. For the past 2 years, Emily had been fighting kidney failure, with no insurance left and no money for dialysis. And Carter, though only 7, had become her legs, her hands, and her only remaining hope. The little boy stepped outside, his small shoes coated in red dust. Carter stopped at the first gas station. Excuse me, could you please help me a little?" The woman looked at him for a second, then hurried off as if she'd never heard that tiny voice. Carter swallowed the tight lump rising in his throat. He continued, crossing to a convenience store. "Sir, I just need a little. My mom is sick." The man waved him off and slammed his car door shut. Each time he was turned away, Carter lowered his head a little more, his steps slowing. But he never stopped, because back in that stifling trailer, someone was waiting for him, clinging to the only hope she had that day. After nearly an hour wandering under the skin-scorching sun, Carter sat down on the wooden step beside a faded food truck owned by a young woman. He didn't cry. He didn't complain. He simply placed a hand over his rumbling stomach and quietly wished. No one knew that just a few minutes later, Carter's life would turn onto a path he never would have dared dream of. A dry wind carrying the scent of red dust swept past the old food truck. Hannah was hurriedly wiping down the wooden counter when she suddenly noticed a small figure curled up on the wooden step beside her truck. The boy was thin, his hair tousled by the desert wind, his hands coated in dust. But what made Hannah stop wasn't his worn-out appearance, but his eyes, an expression both mature and frightened, the look of a child forced to grow up far too soon. Hannah stepped down from the food truck and bent slightly toward him. "Hey, kid, you all right?" Carter looked up, his brown eyes wide and confused. He didn't answer. He only swallowed deeply, as if afraid that if he opened his mouth, the tears would spill out. Hannah understood immediately. She turned back into the truck, scooped a hot serving of tacos, and added some melted cheese, something every kid loves. She brought it out and placed it in front of him. "Eat, kid. The sun's about to roast you out here." But Carter didn't touch it. He lifted his gaze to Hannah, his voice small, trembling, hesitant. "Ma'am, could you wrap it up? I want to bring it home for my mom." A simple sentence, but enough to squeeze the heart tight. Hannah froze for a few seconds. Her face softened, almost breaking. Without asking anything else, she immediately went back inside, found a clean takeout box, packed the food carefully, and then handed it to Carter. Carter received the box as if it were the most precious thing in the world. He hugged it close to his chest and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you so much." And then, before Hannah could say anything else, the little boy darted off, his small feet kicking up clouds of red dust under the sun. Hannah stood there, watching that tiny figure disappear among the rows of run-down trailers. Something inside her tightened, a strange, deep feeling as if she had just met a child life had never treated fairly. And Hannah had no idea. This was only the beginning of a journey she could never have imagined. Carter ran through rows of old trailers, avoiding puddles of stagnant water and the indifferent glances of a few apathetic neighbors. Reaching a faded trailer, he stopped, took a deep breath, and pushed the wooden door whose hinge was barely holding on. The door let out a long, dragging creak. Sad, like the life lived inside it. "Mom, I'm back!" Carter's voice was so soft that one had to strain to hear it. Inside, a faint light filtered through a cracked window. The trailer was so narrow that just 2 steps would take you from one wall to the other. On the thin bed lay Emily, Carter's mother, turned slightly to the side, her face pale, her lips cracked and dry. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of her son's voice. "Carter, is that you?" She tried to sit up, but her hands trembled uncontrollably. Carter placed the food container on a wobbly folding table, then quickly moved to help her. "Mom, don't try to stand. Let me help you." He took an old plastic plate, rinsed it with the remaining water from the jug, then divided the tacos into small pieces and fed his mother, calmly, carefully, like someone far older than his years. Each time Emily tried to swallow, Carter tilted his head slightly, watching her closely, afraid she might choke, afraid it might hurt her. No one taught him that. Life did. When Emily finished eating, Carter took a crumpled napkin and gently wiped her lips. The act was heartbreakingly beautiful. Emily's hand trembled as she held his. "How did you get food, Carter?" "A kind lady at a food truck gave it to me. Her name is Hannah." Emily closed her eyes. A tear slid down her temple. "May God bless her." "Don't cry, Mom," Carter whispered. "I'm still here." Mother and son held each other in the cramped room, the silence pressing down like it was holding back hundreds of unspoken fears they both carried. Meanwhile, on the other side of the neighborhood, Hannah sat inside her food truck, now closed for the day. She couldn't forget Carter's eyes, his words, "I want to bring it home for my mom," or the way he ran off with that precious box. She looked up at the metal ceiling of the truck and murmured to herself, "A child should never have to worry like that. I have to do something." That night, Hannah tossed and turned until morning. She didn't know that those restless thoughts were pushing her toward a decision that would change 3 lives forever. The next morning, just as the sun rose, Hannah was already standing still behind the wheel of her food truck. She couldn't get Carter out of her mind. She kept asking herself, why would a 7-year-old run that fast just to bring one meal home to his mom? In the middle of her tangled thoughts, Carter appeared again. Small steps, slow, but with the same flicker of hope in his eyes as the day before. Hannah bent down and smiled softly. "You're back, huh? Hold on a second for me." She prepared 2 generous meals, placing them in separate containers just as she had done the day before. But this time, Hannah added a bottle of water, a few wet wipes, and a decision she had spent the entire night thinking about. "Carter, today, can I go with you?" Carter froze. He instinctively tightened his grip on the food box as if afraid of losing something precious. "I want to meet your mom. Is that okay, ma'am? If you say yes. The boy nodded slightly, his eyes filled with both joy and worry. Then the two of them walked through the red dust streets, the desert wind whistling past the old trailer roofs like the sighs of a weary neighborhood. When they reached the faded trailer, Carter opened the door and turned back. You can come in. My mom will be so happy. Hannah stepped inside, and her heart felt like it was being squeezed. The trailer was no larger than a small bedroom. No air conditioning, no refrigerator, no medicine. Only an old box fan struggling to spin, letting out a tired, rattling sound. On the bed, Emily lay on her side, skin pale from illness, lips cracked, eyes exhausted but still trying to open at the sound of Carter's voice. Mom, this is Miss Hannah. She helped me. Emily tried to lift her head, her voice raspy. Thank you. You're so kind. I don't know what to say. Hannah sat beside her, her heart heavy. She held Emily's hand, a hand so light it felt like all strength had left it. You don't have to say anything. I just came to see if you two were all right. Emily let out a faint laugh, a heartbreaking one. All right? I don't remember the last time I felt okay. Hannah looked around. No medicine, no food reserves, only the quiet, desperate perseverance of a mother and child clinging to each other like the last two leaves on a dying branch. Carter stood nearby, his fingers twisting the hem of his shirt, as if he were scared Hannah would be overwhelmed and walk away. Hannah smiled gently and placed a hand on his head. Carter, I'm not going anywhere. Then she looked at Emily, tilting her head, eyes deep with resolve. Emily, starting today, I'll be happy to help you both. Maybe not much, maybe not perfectly, but I promise you won't face this alone anymore. Emily fell silent. Her eyelids began to tremble. A tear slipped down, then another. Thank you. No one has said something like that to me for such a long time. Hannah gently took a wet wipe and cleaned Emily's dry lips. She saw the woman's extreme frailty and the invisible strength of Carter, a 7-year-old boy carrying his entire tiny world on his shoulders. In that moment, Hannah realized she hadn't just given them a meal. She had reached out a hand to a family slowly sinking. She exhaled softly. You're not alone anymore. Not while I'm here. And from that moment on, the very first thread connecting Hannah, Emily, Carter was woven. A thread that would pull them through miracles no one could have imagined. Far from the Arizona desert, over 1,000 miles away, the late afternoon sky of Seattle sank into its signature shade of gray, cold, damp, and heavy with silence. Inside a wide glass-walled office overlooking Elliott Bay, a man stood as still as a statue. A flawless black suit, an elegant silver watch. But behind those deep eyes flickered a sorrow he could no longer hide. Ethan Miller, 34, co-founder of a tech company now worth billions. A man who appeared in news features, conferences, and profiles, often referred to as a self-made tech genius. But right now, he was simply a man confronting an emptiness no one else could see. In Ethan's hand was an old photograph. A young woman with soft brown hair, a smile bright as the early summer sun of Seattle. Her head rested gently on his shoulder. That woman was Emily, the one he had not forgotten for even a single day. Ethan brushed the corner of the photo, his eyelids trembling just slightly. Emily, I'm back." Years ago, when he received a scholarship to study abroad, Emily was the one who arranged everything for him. She even gave up all her savings meant for nursing school, just to help him finish his application. He once promised to return, bring her overseas, and build a beautiful future together. But that flight carried with it a tragedy no one could have predicted. Just 2 weeks after arriving in Europe, one night on his way back to the dorm, Ethan was robbed. His phone, wallet, everything was taken. All his essential contacts, especially Emily's, were gone in an instant. He tried desperately to reconnect, sending emails, calling familiar places, but Emily had changed her number, switched jobs. It was as if she had vanished from his world. Ethan looked up at the ceiling, taking a long breath as if swallowing all the ache lodged in his chest. "I never left you. I just didn't know where to find you." As his career slowly rose, Ethan kept telling himself that one day he would return to Seattle just to look for Emily. And today, he finally stood here. That evening, Ethan drove to the old apartment building where Emily once lived. The creaky wooden stairs seemed to carry the echoes of the past still. An older woman who'd lived there for decades glanced at him and froze. You're Ethan, aren't you? The young man who used to pick Emily up from work?" Ethan spun around instantly. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might tear through his chest. "Yes, I'm Ethan. Do you know where Emily is now?" The older woman sighed, a deep, weighted breath full of years of unspoken stories. "Poor girl. After you left, she discovered she was pregnant. Then the sickness came. No money, no help. She had to leave this place, and no one knows where she went." Ethan stood frozen. For what felt like the first time in his life, he couldn't find his own breath. Pregnant? Yes. She had a little boy. He must be 6 or 7 by now. The woman placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder, light yet heavy with memory. "She loved you deeply. Even the day she left, she still hoped you'd come back." Ethan gripped the wall, his eyes turning red. "Emily, you went through everything alone?" The world seemed to slow into a blur. All the spotlight, success, and awards suddenly meant nothing. Only one truth remained clear in his heart. He had to find Emily. He would find her, even if he had to search to the ends of the earth. Nearly a week after his conversation with the older woman in Seattle, Ethan Miller was already on his way to Arizona. What drove him now was no longer just finding an old lover, but finding a family he never had the chance to protect. His sleek black SUV cut across scorching dirt roads, heading toward a poor suburban area where a small medical center awaited his charitable support. After hours of traveling, stomach empty since morning, Ethan leaned back in his seat and rubbed his forehead. "Stop anywhere. I just need something to eat." The driver looked around. In the middle of the burning desert, there were no restaurants, no diners, except for one faded food truck parked by the roadside, its chalk-written sign sun-bleached. Hannah's Homemade Tacos. "Sir, this seems to be the only place." Ethan nodded. 4 SUVs braked at the exact moment, kicking up a thick cloud of red dust. People nearby turned to stare, thinking a government agent or some political convoy had arrived. But the moment Ethan stepped out, all the sounds around him felt muted, like he was standing behind glass. His eyes were immediately drawn to one corner of the food truck, where Carter stood on a little stool, carefully washing plastic plates with surprising precision. The boy wore an apron twice his size, a faded shirt, his face slick with sweat. Yet his eyes remained bright, focused as if he were doing the most critical task in the world. A small, simple scene, yet it made Ethan take an involuntary step forward, pulled by something invisible. He bent down. "What's your name, kid?" Carter looked up, his brown eyes clear as a morning lake. "My name is Carter, sir." The way he answered, polite, gentle, yet strangely mature for his age, made something tighten inside Ethan's chest. Before he could say anything more, Hannah stepped out from the truck, her face slightly tense at the sight of the luxury convoy. "Hello. What would you like to order?" Ethan turned to her with a polite smile. "Something simple is fine, but I'd like to ask something first." He glanced back at Carter. "Why is a little kid like you working here? Isn't today a school day?" Hannah froze for a moment. Carter lowered his head, his hands trembling slightly. Hannah bit her lip, then answered slowly. "He doesn't go to school anymore. His mother is very sick. His situation isn't like other kids." Ethan looked at Carter again. Even with exhaustion and hunger visible on his small face, the boy's eyes still shone, still trying to be strong, like an adult carrying too much. A strange familiarity rose in Ethan's chest, as if he had seen those eyes before, in someone more important than anything in his life. He spoke softly. "Do you know what illness your mother has?" Carter whispered. "Kidney failure. The last stage, sir. I just want my mom not to hurt anymore." His voice cracked. Ethan's heart jolted like someone had pulled a wire taut inside him. A 7-year-old boy, saying words no child should ever have to say. Ethan turned to Hannah. "I'd like to meet his mother, if you're both okay with it." Hannah looked at the man standing before her, crisp shirt, steady eyes, yet with a fracture of emotion she couldn't quite place. But she knew one thing for sure. He wasn't an evil man. "If you want to help, I'll show the way." Carter glanced at Hannah, then at Ethan. He gave a slight nod. Small, yet it felt like he was placing all his trust into something far bigger than himself. The lead SUV rolled into the rundown trailer park where the ground was cracked and dry, and rusted tin roofs clattered against each other in the wind like a sorrowful tune. Carter sat in the back seat, his small hands twisting together. Hannah placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, trying to reassure him. "It's okay, kid. I'm right here with you." Ethan, wealthy, composed, but carrying eyes both tender and haunted, sat in the front, struggling to keep calm. There was something about Carter, an instinct, a quiet stirring inside him that made his heartbeat feel unsteady. The SUV came to a stop in front of the familiar trailer. Carter got out first and hurried to open the door. The door shook violently, as if ready to fall off its hinges. "Mom, I'm home." There was no answer. Only the hot desert wind blows through a cracked window. Carter turned back and gave Hannah and Ethan a slight nod, signaling for them to enter. They stepped inside. And at that exact moment, the world seemed to stop. On the old bed in the corner, beneath the thin light leaking through the broken blinds, Emily lay there, thin to the point of bone, lips turning purple, breathing in weak, uneven pulses as if each breath could be her last. Hannah froze, hand covering her mouth. Carter rushed to his mother, gently shaking her. "Mom, I brought food for you." Emily's eyes fluttered open, struggle written in every movement. Her vision blurred. She tried to focus on her son's face, then on the man standing at the doorway. Her entire body trembled. Ethan stepped forward, shock washing over him like he was seeing a ghost from his past. "Emily." His voice cracked, strangled. Emily's eyes widened, her pupils trembling violently. Ethan? His name slipped from her lips like her final breath. She tried to sit up, but her arms shook uncontrollably, powerless. Ethan rushed forward and dropped to his knees beside her bed. God, Emily, it's me. It's really me. Hannah stood behind them, utterly confused. Carter looked from his mother to the unfamiliar man, bewildered. Mom? Who is he? Emily bit her lip until it bled, tears spilling down her sunken cheeks. Ethan, you really came back. Ethan held her hand, weightless, frail like rolled paper. His arm trembled visibly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of this. Alone. Carter stood frozen, heart pounding, as if everything around him was about to shatter. Hannah placed a hand on his back, but her own eyes were filled with shock. Ethan looked from Emily to Carter. His eyes widened, as if two missing pieces of his life had suddenly clicked into place. He whispered, Carter, these eyes. Hannah stepped back, speechless. Ethan turned to Emily, voice breaking apart. Emily? Carter. He's my son. Isn't he? Emily closed her eyes tightly. A heavy tear rolled down. She had no strength to speak. She only nodded. A slight, fragile nod, yet enough to tear open all three hearts. Ethan covered his face. His breath broke into uneven gasps, choking with grief. Oh God, I have a son. And the two of you had to live like this? Carter stood motionless. Hannah stared in stunned silence, her hands trembling as she took in the heartbreaking scene. A family, ripped apart by one slight, cruel twist of fate. A child, raised in darkness, never knowing his father was alive. And a man, finding his son at the most devastating moment imaginable. Suddenly, Ethan sprang to his feet, turned to the doorway. No more delays, he shouted. Call an ambulance. Start the cars. We're taking her to the hospital now. Hannah pulled Carter into her arms as the men in black rushed in, lifting Emily with urgent care. Ethan grabbed Carter's hand. You're coming with your mom. I'll take her to the best place there is. I promise. Carter looked up, his big eyes trembling. Sir, do you know my mom? Ethan swallowed hard, voice breaking. I don't just know her. Carter, I'm your... He couldn't finish. The medics were already carrying Emily out the door. Ethan ran after them, leaving Carter standing in Hannah's embrace. The desert wind howled, lifting red dust into the air like an old curtain being torn open. A new chapter of their story had officially begun. The ambulance siren screamed through the red dust of the Arizona desert, slicing open the heavy, suffocating air around the rundown trailer. Carter sat bolt upright in the back, his small hands trembling so violently that he clung tight to Hannah's shirt. His mother lay motionless on the stretcher, face pale to the point of translucence, breath flickering in and out like a candle dying in the wind. Ethan ran alongside the paramedics, his expression stretched tight as a drawn wire. There was no trace of a wealthy CEO in him now, only a man terrified of losing the woman he had loved more than life itself. Please, hurry, he shouted, voice cracking with raw desperation. One of the doctors glanced back, face grim. We're doing everything we can, but her condition is extremely critical. Ethan swallowed hard, fists clenching so tightly that the veins bulged in his hands. Don't let her go. Not today. When the ambulance burst through the gates of Mayo Clinic, the medical team rushed Emily inside as an emergency case. Hannah carried Carter as they waited in the bright white hallway, where the harsh hospital lights reflected in the tears pooling in the boy's eyes. "Miss Hannah, is my mom going to die?" Carter's voice shook, fragile, crumpled like torn paper. Hannah knelt and held him close, her own eyes reddening as she tried to steady her voice. "No, sweetheart, not today. Your mom has so many people fighting for her now, and there's one person who will not let her slip away." Through the glass window, Carter saw Ethan running beside the stretcher, as if stopping for even 1 second might let Emily fall into a darkness beyond saving. 2 hours later, a doctor emerged. The look in his eyes made both Hannah's and Carter's hearts clench. "Emily has reached end-stage kidney failure. If she doesn't receive a transplant immediately, she won't make it." Carter froze and then suddenly burst into tears, throwing himself into Hannah's arms as if trying to hold on to the last piece of his world. Ethan stood motionless, as if the color had been drained from his eyes, but only for a moment. Then he lifted his head. His voice, low and resolute, sliced through the hallway. "Test me, right now. If I'm a match, I'll donate." The doctor blinked in surprise. "Are you sure? This is a life-altering—" "I don't care about the risks," Ethan cut in, voice sharp. "I just need to know if I can save her." Carter wiped his tears, staring up at Ethan with trembling hope. "Sir, you'll really save my mom?" Ethan knelt, placing both hands gently on the boy's shoulders. "Not, sir. Carter, it's Dad. Dad will save your mom. I promise." Carter froze, then collapsed into Ethan's arms, crying so hard his small body shook, as though every year of fear, loneliness, and abandonment finally had a place to fall. 1 hour later, the doctor returned with test results in hand. His expression softened. "Ethan is the best match. If we operate immediately, we can save Emily." Carter jumped to his feet, tears shining like revived hope. "So my mom? She's going to live?" "As long as we operate now," the doctor confirmed. Ethan closed his eyes for a few seconds, releasing the mountain of fear crushing his chest. He placed his hand on Carter's head, offering a tired but unwavering smile. "Come on, son. Let's save your mom." The surgery lasted nearly 8 hours. The ticking of the hallway clock became a slow, torturous drumbeat for Hannah and Carter. Carter sat curled up, leaning into Hannah, his swollen eyes flicking between fear and fragile hope, until the operating room light flipped from red to green. The doors opened. The surgeon pulled off his mask and exhaled a long, relieved breath. The transplant was successful. Emily is going to live. Carter burst into tears, loud, raw, shaking, throwing his arms around Hannah as if hugging the entire universe. Hannah bowed her head, tears falling freely from her eyes. The doctor continued, "Ethan lost a significant amount of blood and is very weak, but he will recover. We're moving him to the recovery room now." Carter wiped his cheeks, then looked at the doctor with the quiet gratitude of a child who had grown up far too fast. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you for saving my mom and my dad." The doctor smiled gently, resting a hand on Carter's head. "It was your dad who saved both of them." In that moment, amid the scent of antiseptic and the cold white glow of hospital lights, a family that had been torn apart for far too long was being stitched back together by love, by tears, and by the silent sacrifice of a man who had never stopped caring. Emily was given a new life. Carter was given back a family. And Ethan found the missing part of his heart he thought was gone forever. The recovery room at Mayo Clinic was bathed in soft white light. The only sound breaking the silence was the steady beep of the heart monitor, the rhythm of a life just pulled back from the edge. Emily lay in the bed, her eyelids trembling. Her body was still weak, but her breathing was steadier now. Carter sat at the edge of the bed, both of his small hands gripping his mother's, afraid that if he let go, she might disappear again. Hannah sat behind him, one hand on his shoulder, both comforting him and keeping him from shaking too hard from nerves. And beside the bed, leaning back in a chair, was Ethan, still wearing a patient gown, IV line in his arm, his face pale with exhaustion. But his gaze had never once left Emily, as if all these years he had been standing right in this spot. Only now, fate finally allowed him to see her again. Emily stirred faintly. Carter sat up instantly. "Mom! Mom!" Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused for a few seconds, as if she didn't know where she was. But when she turned to her right and saw Ethan, her entire body stiffened. Ethan. Her voice was like a breath of wind, so weak one would have to strain to hear it. Ethan stood, despite the dizziness, and stepped closer to the bed, his gaze softening like calm water after a storm. "It's me. I'm right here, Emily." A tear slipped from the corner of her eye. Am I dreaming? Are you really here?" Ethan leaned down and took her hand, a hand cold and feather light, a hand he once thought he would never touch again. "You're not dreaming. This time, I found you." Emily choked up, glancing around, trying to understand what had happened. Why? Why am I still alive? Right before I passed out, I thought that was the end." Carter tightened his grip on her hand, voice cracking. Because Dad saved you." Emily turned, eyes wide in shock. "Dad?" Carter nodded so fast his tears splashed onto the blanket. "Yes, Mom. Ethan, he's my dad. He donated his kidney to save you." Emily almost sat up, but her body was too weak. She could only lift herself a few centimeters before collapsing back. Her breath hitched as tears spilled down her cheeks. "Ethan, you gave me your kidney?" Ethan swallowed, his voice trembling. "I couldn't let you die. Not after everything you've endured. Not when I still haven't told you that I never stopped loving you." Emily covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking as if struck by a cold wind straight through her chest. "I thought you left me. I thought you didn't want anything to do with me anymore." Ethan shook his head sharply, his eyes filled with so much pain that even Hannah, standing behind, had to wipe her own tears. "No, Emily. I was robbed. I lost everything, every contact, every way to reach you. I searched for you for years. But when I finally had the power to come back, you were gone from Seattle." Emily's throat tightened. Words wouldn't come out. Carter climbed onto the bed and wrapped his arms around her, whispering, "Mom, please don't hurt anymore. Please don't leave me, okay?" Emily held him tightly, tears falling onto his soft hair. "I'm not going anywhere. I promise." Ethan watched them, the two people he loved with everything he had, and then he spoke, voice gentle but firm as stone. "From now on, neither of you will fight alone. I'm here now, and I'm not leaving again." Emily looked at Ethan once more, this time with an expression full of pain and relief and trembling hope. Can I believe that, Ethan? Ethan squeezed her hand. As long as you breathe, I'll be here. As long as you live, I'll love you. At that moment, Hannah turned away to wipe her tears. She knew she had just witnessed a family returning from the brink of death. Carter kissed his mother's hand and whispered, "Mom, we have Dad now." Emily broke down in tears. Ethan leaned down and placed a hand on Carter's hair, a soft touch, yet carrying the weight of a vow. "Son, I'm here now." A family, torn apart by time, was slowly being stitched back together with tears and love as whole as the day it began. That afternoon, sunlight streamed through the recovery room window, falling across the hospital bed where Emily lay, forming soft, warm strips, like fingers gently touching hope. Carter still sat beside his mother, his head resting on her arm. Ethan sat opposite him, his eyes finally gentling after hours of fear. And near the door, Hannah stood quietly, doing everything she could not to intrude on a family that had just found its way back together. She had been standing there for a long time, her hands clasped awkwardly, as if she didn't belong in this warm, reunited space. But Carter noticed. He perked up. "Miss Hannah, come in." Hannah startled slightly, offering a small smile. "I just wanted to see how your mom is doing." Ethan turned toward her, his eyes carrying a depth of gratitude no words could fully hold. He stood, still weak, and walked toward her. "Thank you." His voice trembled, not from pain, but from genuine emotion. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have found Carter. I wouldn't have saved Emily." Hannah shook her head. "I only gave him a few meals. I didn't do anything big." Ethan met her gaze, speaking slowly, as if he wanted every word to hang in the air. "You saw a child when the whole world walked past him as if he didn't exist. You fed him. You gave him hope. You made him believe there are still good people in this world." Hannah lowered her head, her eyes reddening. "I just couldn't stand seeing him hungry." Emily shifted, lifting a weak hand to gesture. "Hannah, come here." Hannah stepped forward, her heart pounding. Emily held her hand, still weak but incredibly warm. "You don't know this, but every meal you sent home with Carter kept me alive day by day. You gave my son something to hold on to. You kept me alive long enough for Ethan to come back." Hannah froze. Her lips trembled. I didn't know it meant so much." Emily smiled faintly. "Kindness doesn't have to be big. It just has to come at the right time." The room fell silent. Even the machines seemed to slow, as if honoring the moment. After a long pause, Ethan spoke again, his voice steady, decisive. "I can't ever repay what you've done, but I can change your future." Hannah blinked. "What do you mean?" Ethan stepped closer. "What do you dream of, Hannah? Going back to school? Opening a bigger restaurant? Or just living without struggling every single day?" Hannah took a step back, stunned. I never thought that far. I just want to pay my lot rent and survive each week." Ethan shook his head. "No. Someone like you deserves more than survival." Carter suddenly jumped in, afraid they would forget him. Dad, Miss Hannah is really nice. She gives me food every day. She helped Mom, too. Hannah laughed through tears. Carter is exaggerating. Ethan cut her off. He's not. He looked at Hannah with complete sincerity. When Emily recovers, I'll arrange for you to have a proper apartment. And I want to help you open an authentic restaurant, one you own. Hannah's eyes widened. What? I can't accept that. Emily interrupted, her voice weak but firm. Hannah, this time, don't turn away from happiness. Carter nodded hard. Yeah, Miss Hannah, I want to eat your tacos forever. Hannah covered her face with both hands, not out of embarrassment, but because too much kindness at once can feel overwhelming. After a long moment, she looked at them, Emily, Carter, Ethan, and whispered, Thank you. No one has ever valued me like this. Ethan smiled softly. You deserve it, Hannah. Emily squeezed her hand. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be a family anymore. In that instant, no one sobbed loudly, but every person in the room felt one truth deeply. Good people, sooner or later, are always seen. And Hannah was the one who opened the door that led them all to their miracle. Days passed after the surgery, and the bright white hospital room at Mayo Clinic slowly transformed from a place of fear into a place filled with laughter. Emily could now sit up against her pillows. Her face was still thin, but her eyes, those gentle eyes Ethan remembered, had regained their light. Carter was never far. He hovered around the room all day, sometimes telling stories, sometimes making his mother laugh, sometimes asking the doctors questions so silly they couldn't help but chuckle. If my mom has a new kidney now, does that mean she's stronger than Iron Man? The doctor burst out laughing. Maybe, but only if she listens and rests. Emily smiled, a real, warm smile Carter had been searching for all his life. Ethan was there every day. Even with the pain from the surgery, even though the doctors told him to rest, he chose to sleep on the long couch in Emily's room instead of his own recovery suite. You should rest more, Emily reminded him. Ethan closed his eyes, smiling gently. I am resting. Right here, next to you. Emily turned away to hide her smile, her heart swelling with joy. After so many years, she finally allowed herself to feel something she once believed she no longer deserved. An ordinary afternoon opened the door to something extraordinary. The window was slightly open, letting in a soft breeze. Carter napped on the small sofa bed, clutching the teddy bear Ethan had bought for him. Hannah was downstairs getting coffee. Only Ethan and Emily remained in the soft quiet of the room. Ethan set down the magazine he was pretending to read and looked at Emily. His eyes no longer held fear, only the calm of a man who had finally found the most precious thing he had ever lost. You know, what is it? Emily asked softly. Ethan took a slow breath as if gathering years of regret into one moment. I used to think I would live the rest of my life without ever seeing you again. There were days I thought you had forgotten me already. Emily lowered her gaze, fiddling with the blanket, her voice barely a whisper. There wasn't a single day I forgot. In that moment, Ethan moved to sit beside her, gently taking her hand. Then, Emily. His voice was low, steady, the voice of a man who had lost too much ever to take love lightly again. Would you give me another chance? Let us be a real family, not just because of Carter, but because we truly choose it. Emily inhaled sharply, not from weakness, but because the question hit the most fragile part of her heart.
Ethan, this is too big. I don't know if I still deserve something like that.
Ethan placed a finger lightly against her lips, soft as rain. You deserve more than anyone I've ever known. He reached into the pocket of his hospital gown and took out a small ring, not shiny, not extravagant. A simple ring from the gift shop downstairs. No witnesses. No spotlight. Just two people who once lost each other, trying to fit the broken pieces back together. This ring isn't beautiful, and it isn't worthy of you. I'll buy the perfect one when you tell me that. Emily pressed a hand to her mouth, laughing and crying at the same time.
You're ridiculous.
Ethan smiled softly. Emily, will you marry me? A gentle breeze drifted through the window. The late afternoon light touched Emily's face. She glowed, just like the first time Ethan met her at the Seattle pier. Soft, warm, full of hope. Emily nodded, a small nod, but powerful enough to erase the darkest years of their lives.
Yes, Ethan, I will.
Right then, Carter startled awake, rubbing his eyes.
Mom? Dad, what are you talking about?
Ethan turned to him with a broad, genuine smile. Carter, you're about to have a real family. Carter looked from his mom to his dad, and then threw his arms around both of them, squeezing so hard they almost couldn't breathe.
Mom! Dad! I've wanted this for so long!
Emily held her son tightly, tears rolling down her cheeks, warm, soft, no longer filled with fear. Ethan wrapped his arms around them both, pulling them close. In that bright white room, there was no more fear, no more distance, nothing missing. Just three people learning how to love again after almost losing each other forever. A few weeks after Emily had recovered enough to leave the hospital, Mayo Clinic felt brighter than usual. Not because of the lights, but because everyone knew something special was happening that day. A small, simple, breathtakingly beautiful wedding between two people who had found each other again after many lost years. Emily wore a modest white dress that the nurses had helped tailor. Carter ran excitedly around the room, constantly checking the bouquet of wildflowers he had hand-picked from the tiny garden outside the hospital. Ethan wore a black suit, still sore from surgery but unable to hide the rare happiness shining in his eyes. The ceremony took place in the small, standard room on the third floor. No grand banquet, no loud music, just the people who truly mattered, and a few warm yellow lights. Hannah had carefully hung herself. She arranged chairs, placed a simple cake on the table, and added a small vase of flowers. Modest, but enough to make the room glow with warmth. Carter hugged Hannah from behind.
Miss Hannah, my mom is getting married today. We have this day because of you.
Hannah laughed softly, ruffling his hair.
You give me too much credit, kiddo. I only did what anyone should do.
But Carter shook his head vigorously.
No, you're family.
The words froze Hannah for a moment. Only a child as fragile as him could say something with such weight. The ceremony began. Ethan stepped forward and took Emily's hand. The elder pastor smiled warmly. You have both walked very long, very dark roads. But today, the light has found its way to exactly where it belongs. Ethan looked into Emily's eyes and spoke as though swearing to the earth itself. I lost you once. I promise. I will never let go again. Emily smiled, her eyes glistening.
I waited for you longer than I ever admitted. Today, I don't have to wait anymore.
When they exchanged rings, Carter couldn't hold it in.
Mom, Dad, kiss! In the movies, they always do that.
The whole room burst into laughter. Ethan leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on Emily's forehead. Not dramatic, not showy, but full of every mile of pain and hope they had crossed to reach this moment. A week later, the little family left Arizona. Seattle greeted them with a soft drizzle, thin like a bridal veil. The penthouse apartment overlooking Elliott Bay looked different now. Carter's toys were scattered everywhere. Emily was smiling as she cooked, and Ethan was reading by the window. Carter ran back and forth between his parents, hugging them whenever he could, as if afraid this happiness would vanish if he didn't hold on to it tightly enough. In a quiet corner, Ethan watched Emily and Carter through the glass and whispered, "We're finally home." Emily turned, her smile so gentle it could soften any heart. Yes, a real home. While that little family began a new chapter in Seattle, Hannah was stepping into a new chapter of her own. When she held the keys to her new apartment, standing in front of the clean wooden door inside a building she'd never dared dream of entering, her breath caught. How could a girl who once lived off an old food truck be given such a start? A few days later, Ethan brought her to a small commercial district. Before her stood a brand new storefront with a simple white sign, Hannah's Kitchen. Hannah froze. She couldn't speak. Ethan just smiled. "This restaurant is yours. You'll have a team to support you. You only need to do what you do best. Cook and be kind." Hannah covered her mouth as tears streamed down. I can't believe this is real. All I did was feed a hungry child." Ethan shook his head gently. "No, you kept a child from being swallowed by circumstance. You gave a mother a reason to hold on. And you helped me find my family again." Hannah bowed her head, tears falling, not from sadness, but from the weight of a burden she had carried alone for far too long, finally lifting. On the evening she locked the restaurant door for the first time, she stood outside and looked at the glowing sign. No one needed to explain it to her. A small action, unnoticed and simple, could change someone's life most beautifully. And in that peaceful moment, Hannah understood that her life had entered a new chapter, not because of a miracle falling from the sky, but because one day she chose to be kind. The last afternoon before the three of them officially settled into their new life in Seattle, Emily stood on the balcony of their apartment, gazing out at the gray-green surface of Elliott Bay. Below, Carter chased the seagulls skimming above the waterfront, his laughter ringing clear and bright, reflecting off the windows of buildings across the street. Ethan stood behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. No grand words, no poetic speeches, but his warmth alone told Emily that this time she would never face another battle alone. "I once thought I'd lost everything," Ethan murmured. "But it turns out I was just taking the long way home." Emily rested her head against his chest. "There was a time I thought fate had closed every door in front of me. I never imagined there would be one last door still open." They stood there for a few quiet seconds, letting the Seattle breeze carry away the painful memories of the past. Down below, Carter waved wildly. "Mom! Dad! Dinner time!" Both of them laughed, a soft, vibrant sound that felt like the ending of an old chapter and the comma of a new one. That night, the family sat together around a small dining table. The meal wasn't luxurious, just a few simple dishes Emily cooked, with Carter helping and Ethan following instructions clumsily but adorably. Yet none of them would trade that meal for anything in the world. Emily looked at the two people who mattered most, her heart melting. If not for the storms, I don't think I would understand how precious peace truly is. Ethan squeezed her hand. If not for being separated, I would never have learned how to love correctly. Small sentences, but they lingered deeply. Hannah video called from Arizona, proudly showing off her new apron and the brightly lit sign of her restaurant. Her smile was wide enough to curve her eyes into crescents. Emily, Carter, Ethan, knowing you're all okay is enough for me. Just be happy. The rest of your lives belong to you now. Carter jumped onto his chair. Miss Hannah, I miss your tacos. Hannah burst into laughter. Grow a little bigger. Fly over here and I'll make you 10 of them. They talked, laughed, and exchanged simple blessings. After the call ended, Emily stared at the blank screen for a moment and whispered, "One act of kindness can save a whole life." Ethan nodded, and Carter muttered softly, "And it can make the world a little better." No one had taught him that, but sometimes children who have lived through more than their years understand life more deeply than adults. After dinner, once Carter was asleep, Emily sat beside Ethan on the couch. The warm golden lamp cast soft shadows around them, wrapping them in a cocoon of gentle light and darkness. Emily looked at him, voice hushed. Maybe miracles are just the right people showing up at the right time. Ethan smiled slowly. It's not a miracle. It's love being sent out and eventually finding its way back. A beautiful silence settled over the room, not empty, but full. Outside, Seattle's soft night rain fell like a whisper. Inside that little apartment, 3 people had finally found what every soul longs for: a home, a hand to hold, and a heart to trust. Today's story isn't about superheroes or the rich saving the poor. It's a story about ordinary people who chose to love each other in their darkest moments. And sometimes, just one small act, a meal, a kind question, a hand offered at the right time, it is enough to change a family's destiny. If something in this story touched your heart, feel free to leave a message below. Deep Life Tales treasures every one of your reflections. And if you want more true, beautiful, human stories, leave a like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. Thank you for staying until the end. See you in the following story, where every small lesson, it is worth living for.